Capital Community TV and the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties welcomes you today to our discussion on the ballot measures that you will see on your ballot arriving about October 20th. Diana, did you know that there were 7 state ballot measures and at least 21 other measures for Marion and Polk County on our ballots? That's a lot of material for people to think about.
It is a lot for us to think about. So today we want to talk about the 7 state ballot measures from research and editing done by the League of Women Voters of Oregon that includes information, documents from the state of Oregon government, and from opponents and proponents of the measures. Hopefully, this will help our voters feel better informed and think before they ink.
Let's look at each measure, knowing that there's expanded information in our voters' guides, which come out in Spanish and English soon to our libraries and local places in our communities.
To help us examine the measures, we have some guests with us from around Marion and Polk counties today that will have some questions for us as we address each measure. So, what do we know about Measure 94?
Well, first we need to know that the first 3 measures, 94, 95, and 96, are legislative referrals, and they amend the Constitution of Oregon. Usually these are just housekeeping measures that are designed to clear up an issue or to make things run more smoothly.
Measure 94 is the Judicial Retirement Amendment that eliminates mandatory retirement age for state judges, which would mean, if passed, that the wording saying that they must retire before the end of the calendar year in which they turn 75 would be eliminated. If it doesn't pass, then state judges would have to retire before they turn 76.
Why does it matter one way or the other?
That's what we want to think on each measure. Why does it matter one way or the other? In this case, supporters tell us that Oregonians would lose a great deal of collective and valuable judicial experience when capable and willing judges cannot choose to continue after 75. Opponents, however, state that the mandatory age of 75 was approved by Oregon voters in 1960 based on the relationship between aging and efficiency, so they see no reason to change the Constitution.
So, besides considering the judges' ages, we also have Measure 95, investments in universities, to look at. This allows investments in equities by public universities to reduce financial risk and increase investments to benefit students.
According to Oregon Financial Estimate Committee, local and state governments would not have any revenue or expenses impact. Impact would be determined by each university for themselves. I wonder why this even came up as a referral.
When universities started exercising the duties, privileges, and obligations that have been granted to them, a legal question arose as to whether the rule against the state owning stocks applied to them. Independent legal authorities suggest that it may bring legal risk. So, by amending the Constitution to say the universities, Eastern Oregon University, Oregon Institute of Technology, Oregon State University, Portland State University, Southern Oregon University, University of Oregon, and Western Oregon University could own stock, would allow them then to invest.
Why would I vote either way on this amendment?
Supporters say that by having investment funds coming in, it could minimize tuition and fund other student programs. But opponents feel there is no guarantee that universities could avoid market loss and they would have to hire investment advisors.
I would like to know about Measure 96 and dedicating more lottery funds.
Measure 96 dedicates 1.5% state lottery net proceeds to funding support services for Oregon veterans by amending the Constitution. This was referred by the Oregon President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. Approximately $9.3 million a year would go into the Veterans Service Fund during 2017 to 2019 biennium, and these funds from the lottery would not change the amount of revenue constitutionally dedicated to other purposes. But it would reduce the unrestricted lottery funds that the legislature can use for education and economic development.
So, because 1 in 12 Oregonians are veterans and have many unique challenges, The Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs would like dedicated funds in addition to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs monies in order to address all these concerns, and feels that revenues have grown enough to support this. But it would put funding measures into our Constitution, and it could affect support to other state programs. Something to think about.
Yes, we have to think and prepare, which means making sure we are all registered to vote, and to do so before October 18th. Ballots must be turned in by November the 8th at 8 p.m., and postmarks don't count. Your ballot should be coming by October the 20th. Make democracy work and be a voter.
So let's get ready for our ballots, and let's continue to explore the ballot measures of 97 to 100, which are placed on the ballot by initiative petition and would be statutory amendments, not constitutional ones.
Measure 97, which increases corporate minimum tax when sales exceed $25 million, funds education, healthcare, and senior services. It is anticipated to increase state revenues by $548 million from January 1 to June 30th of 2017, and by $3 billion each year after that. It can't be determined what the impact on state expenditures per program will be.
Money issues and taxes are areas of concern to our Oregonians, so looking at some background may help us. Measure 5 passed in 1990 and capped and reduced property taxes for both homeowners and businesses. It also transferred responsibility for school funding from local to state government. There are two main types of corporation. One gets corporate income to its shareholders, who then pay their personal income tax on it, and the corporation just pays $150 flat tax. The other corporation pays either a minimum tax of 0.1% of their Oregon sales or 6.6% of their taxable income up to $1 million, whichever is greater. Currently, the minimum tax is capped at $100,000 on Oregon sales above $1 million.
So which type of corporation is affected, and in what ways?
Measure 97 would only affect the second type of corporations that do not have enough taxable income to pay income tax, and as a result, pay the minimum tax on Oregon sales. Measure 97 would raise the minimum tax rate to 2.5% on the portion of Oregon sales above $25 million and remove the cap.
What does this mean to prices, jobs, and state revenues?
That's a very important question. If we use data from the Legislative Review Office, often referred to as LRO, we find that Oregon sales are heavily concentrated in domestic consumer sectors like retail, wholesale, and utilities. And so this measure would act largely as a consumption tax and would likely result in somewhat higher prices in those areas. Also, it might be expected to dampen income, employment, and population growth over the next 5 years. But LRO states that this is within the 1% expected projections. Portland State University and the Legislative Review Office did studies that indicated a wide range of job loss and job gain, ranging from 4,000 private sector job loss to 38,000 job loss. These reports also included job growth with a range of 17,000 to 30,000 increase in the higher paying public sector and government jobs. None of the models includes estimates of the potential impacts of making significant investments in education, healthcare, and senior services. Legislative Review Office reported that this measure would increase stability of state revenue over the business cycle.
Wow. So I need to think also about what supporters and opponents are saying. Supporters say that it would not raise prices on most consumer goods since corporations charge the same regardless of the tax levels in the states where they sell the goods, and that the money is needed since our education ranking is low. So many Oregonians lack health coverage, and so many seniors are in poverty. You've already said that LRO believes it will improve revenue stability.
That's true, but let's consider the opponent's view, that it's a regressive tax and it is estimated to cost households an increase of $600 each year, while not guaranteeing that the revenues will actually go to schools or health care, since it is the legislature that will decide how to use it. They also believe that it would hurt Oregon employers and small businesses by making them less competitive.
This is a difficult issue, so please read more about this measure at the League of Women Voters Guide online at lwvor.org/voter resources.
I understand that there is another school-type measure on the ballot. What is that about?
Yes, there is another. This is Measure 98, which requires state funding for dropout prevention, career and college readiness programs in Oregon high schools. If it passes, the legislature would be expected to commit an additional $147 million, or that is 1.4% of the state budget per year, to fund the designated programs. And since there's no additional revenue source identified, the legislature would have to determine the funding.
And simply, if it fails, the legislature would not be required to commit additional funds to career and technical programs or dropout prevention.
So what would this look like in operation?
It would look like the following, because the measure directs the legislature to provide at least $800 per enrolled high school student per school year for those three purposes: career and technical programs, college preparedness, and for dropout prevention. Schools can choose whether to apply for these additional funds, and they must submit grant proposals showing how the funds would be used in order to get them. The Department of Education would monitor the districts receiving the funds, and the Secretary of State would conduct audits on the program's successes.
Our last audience question asked about school-type measures on the ballot, and we have another one for you to consider, which is Measure 99. This measure creates Outdoor School Education Fund, continuously funded through the lottery, to provide outdoor school programs statewide.
So if this measure passes, a separate fund of up to 4% of the monies from the Oregon Lottery Economic Development Fund, which are not to exceed $22 million, would be used to provide outdoor school programs statewide. And when it fails, no special fund would be created for these programs.
To understand this measure, some background might help. The first outdoor school was started in Medford in 1957, and currently all but 4 Oregon counties have some outdoor programs, although 20 of them have fewer than 40% of their students participating, and many offer a 1-2 day event rather than a week. In 2015, the Oregon legislature passed a bill establishing an outdoor education account in the state treasury for 5th and 6th graders, and authorized OSU Extension to administer the fund and to distribute any grants that came in. Money originally dedicated to this did not, however, appear in the final bill.
So if I believe that outdoor education provides hands-on learning different from the classroom, and want to give it stable funding without raising taxes, and want to give more than the current 40% of students a chance to participate in an outdoor school opportunity, I would then vote for this measure?
Yes, you would. And you would vote against it if you don't want another dedicated lottery funding, or believe that the initiative process is not the way to allocate funding for programs, or if you believe it would affect other lottery school monies.
I believe you said that we also had a Measure 100. What makes that measure special to Oregonians?
Like Measure 99, that addresses issues around being outdoors. This measure looks at the natural resources of wildlife species. Measure 100 prohibits purchase or sale of parts or products from certain wildlife species, with exceptions and civil penalties.
There would be a financial impact, and this would be at the state enforcement level, but it would be at a cost of less than $100,000 and no expected expenses for local governments. I think there's a definition that would help people decide on this measure, and that's the definition of wildlife trafficking, or poaching. This is the unauthorized capture, possession, sale, transportation, and distribution of wildlife or their body parts. An example that we would all probably know is the illegal elephant ivory. This type of trafficking is one of the largest markets for illegal transnational commerce, but it is the least prosecuted. The Oregon legislature considered but did not approve wildlife trafficking legislation in 2015, and therefore the proponents of Measure 100 used the initiative petition to bring this to the voters in 2016. Oregon Fish and Wildlife would adopt the rules to implement this measure should it pass.
This measure would restrict the trafficking of animals, body parts, or products from 12 wildlife species groups that are not native to Oregon and allow for local enforcement of this trafficking.
You mentioned there were exceptions. What are they?
One is that any activity related to federal law enforcement or authorized by federal law are accepted, and another relates to antiques and musical instrument sales that have less than 0.4 pounds of designated wildlife parts. Yet another is that the items of the 12 animals listed may be inherited or donated to scientific or educational institutions. Native American federally recognized tribes may possess animal species parts or products. This has been a brief, neutral look at the 7 state ballot measures, which we hope has helped you in your understanding of the issues. Again, please make sure you are registered, or if you need to make any registration adjustments for moving, name change, or party changes, do so before October the 18th. Please check our Vote 411 or Voter Resources online sites for more information.
This is Deanie Anderson and Diana Bodker from the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties, saying thank you to our studio guests and our viewing audience for helping make democracy work by taking the time to get informed about our state ballot measures. Thanks to CCTV and to the League of Women Voters for providing the vehicle and the information to share with you. Please watch our other voter education programs and check the CCTV website for times and dates. Be a voter, and remember, your vote counts.